The text message lit up my phone at 6:30 in the morning. Vivian, we need you to host Thanksgiving this year. Jason's entire family is coming, 22 people. You have the space, and honestly, nobody makes stuffing like you do. I stared at those words from my daughter Claire, feeling something shift inside my chest. 22 people, said so casually like she was asking me to water her plants while she went on vacation. My name is Vivian Monroe. I'm 74 years old. I've been a widow for 28 years, ever since my husband Daniel died in a construction accident when Claire was just 17. And for all those years since, I've been something I never wanted to be. The family's unpaid servant, invisible except when someone needed something. But that morning, reading Claire's text message while my coffee grew cold, something inside me finally broke. Or maybe it finally healed. I'm still not sure which. To understand what happened next, you need to know what Claire said 3 days before that text message. What she said while I stood in my own hallway, holding a tray of cookies I'd baked for her book club meeting. Honestly, Jason's family thinks she exists just to make our lives easier. It's kind of perfect, actually. We never have to worry about hosting or cooking or any of that exhausting stuff. She was talking to her friend Amanda, and they were laughing. My daughter was laughing about how I existed only to serve her family's needs. Jason, my son-in-law, was right there in my living room. He didn't defend me. He didn't look uncomfortable. He just nodded and said, "Your mom's a lifesaver. Don't know what we'd do without her bank account and her kitchen." I stood there frozen, cookies growing cold on the tray, watching my daughter and her husband treat my generosity like it was their right. That's when I understood something I'd been denying for almost 3 decades. I wasn't Claire's mother anymore. I was her resource, her solution, her convenient answer to every problem that required time, money, or effort. This is Revenge Stories with Michelle, a home for quiet courage and true endings. If you feel my words, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice matters here. Your story matters too. Let me tell you how we got here. Let me tell you about 28 years of slowly disappearing while everyone around me took and took until there was almost nothing left. When Daniel died, Claire was a junior in high school. One moment I had a husband, a partner, someone who saw me as Vivian the woman, not just Vivian the wife and mother. The next moment I was alone with a grieving teenager and bills I didn't know how to pay. Daniel's life insurance barely covered the funeral. The construction company fought us on compensation for 2 years before settling for an amount that sounds generous until you realize it has to last the rest of your life. I worked double shifts at the hospital where I was a nursing assistant, my feet aching, my back screaming, my hands raw from washing them 100 times a day. But I made sure Claire never went without. Designer prom dress? I saved for 6 months. College application fees? I picked up extra weekend shifts. Her dream school across the country? I sold the vintage car Daniel had been restoring, the one thing of his I wanted to keep, and sent her off with enough money for books and supplies. I told myself it was what mothers do. We sacrifice, we give. We make our children's dreams possible even when it means our own dreams die quietly in dark corners. Claire came back from college with a degree in marketing and a boyfriend named Jason who wore expensive watches and talked about investment portfolios like other people talk about the weather. They got married 2 years later in a wedding that cost $38,000. I paid for half of it. Claire said it was tradition for the bride's family to contribute, and since it was just me, I needed to cover what would have been both parents' share. She said this like it made perfect sense, like the fact that her father was dead meant I owed her double. I emptied my savings account and told myself it was her special day. Every girl deserves a beautiful wedding. The requests started small after that. "Mom, can you watch our apartment while we're on our honeymoon? Someone needs to water the plants and get our mail." Then bigger. "Mom, Jason's car broke down and we're a little short this month. Could you lend us $3,000? We'll pay you back when his bonus comes through. The bonus never came, or if it did, it went to other things. A new sound system for their apartment, a weekend trip to wine country, concert tickets. Every few months there was a new emergency. Jason lost another job. He went through 3 in the first 2 years of marriage. Mom, could you cover our rent just this once? Claire's voice always had that edge of panic, that tone that made me feel like saying no would make me responsible for whatever disaster followed. I said yes. I always said yes. When they bought their house 5 years ago, I co-signed the mortgage because their credit wasn't good enough. I gave them $25,000 for the down payment, money I'd been saving for the retirement I kept telling myself was coming someday. You'll practically live here too, Mom, Claire had said, showing me the house with its big kitchen and spacious dining room. We'll have Sunday dinners every week. It'll be like a family home for all of us. I've been invited to 3 Sunday dinners in 5 years, but I've cooked at least 40 of them in that house, for Jason's family, for Claire's friends, for office parties where I was the hired help, except I didn't get paid. 2 years ago, Jason's mother, Beverly, started joining these gatherings. Beverly, who would inspect my cooking like a restaurant critic, who would reorganize my serving dishes because presentation matters, Vivian, who would give me a list of her dietary restrictions that changed every month. And Claire never said a word, never told Beverly to back off, to show some respect, to remember whose mother was doing all the work. I kept a ledger, not because I'm petty, but because I used to manage hospital supply budgets and old habits die hard. Every dollar I spent on Claire and Jason went into that ledger. 28 years of entries, groceries I bought for dinners at their house, furniture I purchased when they needed to stage their home for Jason's boss's visit, car repairs, medical bills when they were between insurance plans, vacations I funded but wasn't invited on. The total came to $97,000. $97,000 that came from my nursing pension, my Social Security, the tiny inheritance I got when my mother died, money I should have been using for my own life, my own needs, my own future. But what future did I have? I was just Mom, just Vivian who existed to solve everyone else's problems. The ledger showed something else, too. It showed that in 28 years, Claire had remembered my birthday exactly 4 times. She'd visited me in the hospital when I had pneumonia 0 times. She was too busy with a work project. She'd asked how I was doing, really asked, maybe a dozen times in nearly 3 decades. But she'd asked for money, for favors, for my time and energy. I stopped counting after 200 requests. That's the history. That's the foundation of what happened when I got that text message about hosting Thanksgiving for 22 people. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten alone for 28 years, and I felt something crack open inside me. Not my heart. That had been breaking slowly for years. This was different. This was clarity. I picked up my phone and typed a response to Claire's text. No. Just that one word, 2 letters that I'd been unable to say for almost 3 decades. My phone rang within 30 seconds. Mom, what do you mean, no? Is your phone broken? Did you mean to send something else? I meant no, Claire. I'm not hosting Thanksgiving, but everyone's already planning on it. I told Jason's parents, his siblings, his grandparents. Beverly already bought a new dress for the occasion. Where are we supposed to have it? That sounds like your problem to solve. The silence on the other end was so complete I thought the call had dropped. Mom, are you feeling okay? Do you need me to take you to the doctor? This isn't like you. This isn't like you. Translation. This isn't like the version of you that does whatever I want. I'm feeling clearer than I have in years, actually. But Mom, I don't know how to cook for 22 people, and our house isn't set up for it. Your dining room is so much bigger and you have all those serving dishes, and honestly, everyone expects your cooking. Everyone expects. Nobody appreciates. Nobody thanks. Nobody considers that maybe, just maybe, I might have other plans. Claire, I'm going to be very clear with you. I'm not hosting Thanksgiving. I'm not cooking. I'm not cleaning up afterward. You and Jason are going to have to figure this out yourselves. This is ridiculous. What are you going to do instead? Sit home alone feeling sorry for yourself? Her words hit like a slap. After everything I'd done, every sacrifice I'd made, she thought saying no to one request meant I was wallowing in self-pity. Actually, I'm going on a cruise. I wasn't. I had no plans at all. But the moment I said it, I knew it was exactly what I was going to do. A cruise? With what money? Mom, be realistic. With what money? As if my money wasn't mine to spend. As if I needed her permission to use my own resources for my own happiness. With my money, Claire. The same money I've been spending on you for 28 years. We never asked you to keep track of that stuff. That's what family does. They help each other. You're absolutely right. That is what family does. Tell me, Claire, when was the last time you helped me? Silence again. Long enough that I could hear her breathing change, could almost hear her frantically searching her memory for a single instance of her being there for me instead of me being there for her. I'm always there when you need me, Mom. When have I needed you, Claire? Give me one example. I call you every week. You call me when you need something. There's a difference. This is insane. Jason, can you talk to her? I heard muffled sounds as she handed the phone to Jason. Vivian, hey, listen. Jason's voice had that smooth, patronizing tone he probably used on difficult clients. I think we're all a little stressed here. How about we take a breath and think about what's really important? Family togetherness, tradition, giving thanks. Jason, how much money do you owe me? I do what? We don't think of it like that. I do. I think of it exactly like that. $97,000 over 28 years. How much have you paid back? We've been meaning to talk about that. Things have been tight, but we're planning to start paying you back next year when my promotion comes through. I've heard about promotions that are coming for 5 years now. None of them have materialized. Vivian, I'm not sure what's gotten into you, but this attitude is really hurtful. We've always treated you with respect. I hung up. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But underneath the fear and adrenaline, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Power. Choice. Freedom. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my reading chair by the window. The autumn sun was setting, painting my living room in shades of amber and gold. My living room, in my house, that I'd paid for with my own work. For the first time in 28 years, I didn't have to worry about solving someone else's crisis. I didn't have to calculate how much money I could spare for Claire's next emergency. I didn't have to plan my schedule around being available whenever she needed something. The phone rang constantly for the next hour. Claire, then Jason, then a number I didn't recognize that I assumed was Beverly. I let every call go to voicemail. That evening, I did something I hadn't done since before Daniel died. I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. Though I was never sure what occasion would be special enough, I poured myself a glass, ordered Chinese food delivery for one, and I ate it slowly, tasting every bite, with no one to cook for and no one to clean up after. It was the best meal I'd had in years. The next morning, I drove to the travel agency downtown, the same building where Daniel and I had planned our honeymoon 47 years ago, back when travel agencies still existed and the world felt full of possibility. A young woman named Rachel greeted me with a bright smile. "Welcome. Are you looking to plan a trip? I want to take a Thanksgiving cruise. Something that leaves before the holiday and doesn't return until after." "Wonderful. Traveling with family?" "No, just me." Rachel's smile never wavered. "Solo travel is amazing. Let me show you some options." She pulled up images of ships and destinations on her computer. The Caribbean, the Mexican Riviera, the Mediterranean, places I'd only seen in magazines while sitting in waiting rooms. This one departs November 20th and returns December 1st, Rachel said, showing me a cruise that stopped in Cozumel, Belize, and the Cayman Islands. It's specifically marketed to mature solo travelers. There are social activities, shore excursions, and plenty of quiet spaces if you just want to read and relax. How much? $2,800 for an ocean view cabin, all meals included. $2,800, less than a third of what I'd paid for Claire's wedding flowers alone, a fraction of what I'd spent on Jason's car repairs last year. I'll take it. Rachel blinked. Don't you want to think about it? Maybe discuss it with family? No, I want to book it right now. As Rachel processed my credit card, I felt lighter with every keystroke. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. When I got home, there were 2 cars in my driveway, Claire's and Beverly's. They were waiting on my porch. Beverly in her pressed slacks and cashmere sweater, Claire in her work clothes looking stressed and angry. "Mom, finally," Claire said as I walked up. "We've been waiting for an hour." "I didn't know you were coming." "Because you're not answering your phone. We need to talk about this Thanksgiving situation." "There's nothing to talk about." "I told you I'm not hosting." Beverly stepped forward. "Vivian, I think you're being very selfish. Claire tells me you've decided to go on some cruise instead of being with your family for the holidays." "That's correct." "Don't you think that's incredibly self-centered? What about family obligations?" I looked at Beverly, really looked at her. This woman who had criticized my cooking for 5 years, who had never once thanked me for the dozens of meals I'd prepared, who had never brought a dish or offered to help clean up. "Beverly, in 5 years of knowing you, have you ever invited me to your home for a meal?" She blinked. "Well, our home is smaller and you're such a good cook." "That's not what I asked. Have you ever invited me?" That's beside the point." "It's exactly the point. You expect me to serve you, but you've never treated me like a guest, never treated me like family." Beverly's face flushed red. "I've always been perfectly polite." "Polite isn't the same as kind. Polite isn't the same as grateful." "Mom, this is getting out of hand," Claire interrupted. "Beverly came here to help sort this out, and you're being hostile." "No, I'm being honest. For the first time in almost 30 years, I'm being honest about how I feel." "And how do you feel?" Claire's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Used. Taken for granted. Invisible, except when you need something." Claire rolled her eyes. "Here we go. The martyr routine." "It's not a routine. It's the truth. Claire, do you know how much money I've spent on you since your father died? I don't want to hear about money." $97,000. The number hung in the air between us. Beverly's mouth fell open slightly. Claire went pale. You're exaggerating. I have receipts. I have bank statements. Every penny documented. Mom, I didn't ask you to keep score." "You're right. You didn't ask me to do a lot of things. You didn't ask if I could afford it. You didn't ask if it was convenient. You didn't ask how I was doing or if I needed help. You just took and assumed I'd keep giving forever. Because you're my mother. That's what mothers do." Her words echoed off my porch, and in them I heard the core of our broken relationship. She genuinely believed that being her mother meant being endlessly available, endlessly generous, endlessly selfless. "Claire, sweetheart, I love you, but I'm done being nothing but your mother. I'm done being just a function in your life." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm a person. I have needs and wants and dreams that have nothing to do with you. And I'm 74 years old and I'm running out of time to live my own life." Beverly made a disgusted sound. "This is what happens when old people get it in their heads to be independent." Someone should check if she's mentally competent to make these decisions. The threat was veiled but clear, and it made something inside me go ice cold. Beverly, if you attempt to have me declared incompetent, I will hire the best lawyer I can find, and I will make your life very difficult. I'm of perfectly sound mind. I'm just done being exploited. Exploited? Claire's voice went shrill. We never exploited you. You used my house as a free venue, my kitchen as a free restaurant, my checkbook as a free bank. What would you call that? Family helping family. Help goes both ways, Claire. When was the last time you helped me with anything? She sputtered, searching for an answer. I helped you set up your new phone last year, after I'd asked you for 3 months, and you complained the entire time about how technologically illiterate I was. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You meant it exactly like that. Just like you meant it when you told your friend that I exist to make your life easier. Claire's face went white. You heard that? I was standing right there with a tray of cookies I'd spent my afternoon baking for your book club. Mom, I was joking. It didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like the truth finally coming out. We stood there in the fading light, 3 women at an impasse. Beverly looked like she wanted to say something but wasn't sure what. Claire looked like she was seeing me for the first time and didn't recognize what she saw. I'm going inside now, I said quietly. I'm going to pack for my cruise. And I'm going to ask both of you to leave. Mom, leave, Claire. We can talk when I get back. Maybe. If you're ready to have an actual conversation instead of just making demands. I walked past them, unlocked my door, and stepped inside. I closed the door firmly and locked it, listening to their muffled voices outside. After a few minutes, I heard car doors slam and engines start. Then silence. I walked to my bedroom and sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. From relief, from the overwhelming sensation of finally standing up for myself. That night, my phone lit up with messages from Claire. Mom, you're being completely unreasonable. Jason says you're having some kind of breakdown. Maybe you should talk to your doctor. From a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Monroe, this is Beverly's husband, Kenneth. I'd like to speak with you about the Thanksgiving arrangement. I'm sure we can find a compromise. From my sister Janet, who lives in Arizona and who I haven't seen in 3 years. Vivian, Claire called me, very upset. What's going on? She says you're refusing to host Thanksgiving? I turned off my phone without responding to any of them. The next morning, I woke up feeling more rested than I had in years. I made myself a real breakfast. French toast and bacon, fresh fruit, good coffee, and ate it slowly while reading the newspaper. At 9 o'clock, my friend Margaret called. Margaret, who I'd met in a grief support group 28 years ago, who had become my closest friend, who was the only person who had consistently asked how I was doing without wanting something in return. Vivian, I heard through the grapevine that you're going on a cruise. The grapevine? Janet called me. She's worried about you, so naturally I had to get the real story. I told her everything. The overheard conversation, the Thanksgiving demand, my decision to go on a cruise, the confrontation with Claire and Beverly. Margaret listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? She finally said. What? I think you're my hero. I think you just did something I wish I'd done 30 years ago with my own kids. Really? Really? Vivian, I've watched you kill yourself trying to be everything for Claire, and I've watched her take it all without a second thought. It broke my heart, but it wasn't my place to say anything. And now I'm saying good for you. Go on that cruise, eat too much, drink fruity cocktails, flirt with some nice widower, live your life. After we hung up, I cried. Not from sadness, but from relief at being seen, being understood, being supported in putting myself first for once. Over the next 2 weeks, the pressure campaign intensified. Claire called daily, alternating between anger and guilt trips. Jason left voicemails about how they'd had to cancel Thanksgiving entirely because of me. Beverly sent a formal letter suggesting I was experiencing age-related cognitive decline. I ignored all of it. I packed my suitcase with new clothes I bought specifically for the trip. Bright colors I never wore because Claire said they made me look like I was trying too hard. I got my hair done in a style I'd always wanted but never tried. I bought new sunglasses and a sun hat with a floppy brim. I was becoming someone I'd forgotten existed. I was becoming Vivian again, not just Mom. The night before my cruise, Margaret took me out to dinner at an expensive restaurant I'd always wanted to try. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her wine glass. "To new beginnings," I echoed. "Are you scared?" she asked. Terrified, but also excited. Is that normal? That's the most normal thing in the world. The morning I left for my cruise, I woke up at 5 a.m. without an alarm. My suitcase sat by the door, wine red and full of possibilities. I made coffee and watched the sunrise through my kitchen window, thinking about all the sunrises I'd missed because I was too busy worrying about Claire's problems. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Mom, please reconsider. We can talk about everything when you get back. Just don't do this." I turned off my phone and put it in my purse. The taxi arrived at 6:30. As we pulled away from my house, I looked back at it in the rearview mirror. That house had been my prison for 28 years, and I was finally escaping. At the port, I stood in line with my fellow travelers. Most were couples, holding hands and consulting their itineraries together. But there were others like me, solo travelers with that same mixture of nervousness and determination on their faces. First cruise? The woman behind me was probably in her early 60s, with silver hair cut short and kind eyes. That obvious? Only because you have the same look I had on my first solo trip. I'm Diana, by the way. Vivian. Traveling alone? Yes. First time ever, really. Diana smiled. Me too, once upon a time. 5 years ago after my divorce. Best decision I ever made. You're going to love it. Boarding the ship felt like stepping into another world. Everything was gleaming and new, full of people who looked excited about life. The staff greeted everyone with genuine warmth, and nobody knew I was supposed to be hosting Thanksgiving for 22 ungrateful people. My cabin was small but perfect. Ocean view, just like Rachel had promised. I unpacked my new clothes, hung them carefully in the tiny closet, and stood at the window watching the port slowly disappear as the ship pulled away. I was really doing this. I was really choosing myself. That first evening, there was a welcome dinner for solo travelers. I almost didn't go, almost ordered room service and hid in my cabin. But I remembered Margaret's words, "Live your life." The dining room was beautiful, with white tablecloths and fresh flowers on every table. I was seated with 5 other women, all traveling alone, all with stories similar to mine in different variations. Diana was there, along with Patricia, a widow from Seattle, Karen, who had just retired from teaching, Linda, who was celebrating her 70th birthday away from her demanding adult children, and Susan, who had simply decided she wanted an adventure. "To women who choose themselves," Diana said, raising her glass of champagne. We all raised our glasses, and in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. I felt like I belonged somewhere that wasn't defined by what I could do for others. Over dinner, we shared our stories. Patricia's husband had died 2 years ago, and her children had immediately started pressuring her to sell her house and move closer to them so she could babysit full-time. Karen's adult son lived in her basement and refused to get a job, draining her retirement savings. Linda's daughter scheduled weekly emergencies that always required Linda's time and money. Susan's family had simply taken her for granted until she realized she'd spent 40 years being invisible. "I kept a journal," Linda said as dessert arrived. "Wrote down every time my daughter called and whether she was asking for something or actually checking on me." In 2 years, 100% of her calls involved a request. Not one single, "How are you, Mom?" without an agenda. "I did something similar," I found myself saying. "I kept track of money. 28 years, $97,000. The table went silent. "And how much did they pay back?" Susan asked quietly. "Zero. They don't even acknowledge it as something that needs repaying." Karen shook her head. "That's financial abuse. If anyone else did that to you, we'd tell you to cut them off immediately." "But she's my daughter," I said, and heard how automatic those words were. How many times I'd used them to excuse the inexcusable. "And that means she should treat you better, not worse," Diana said firmly. "Family is supposed to be the people who value you most, not the people who exploit you most." The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but those words stayed with me. Family is supposed to value you most. Over the next few days, I did things I'd never allowed myself to do. I slept in without guilt. I read books on the deck while the ocean stretched endlessly around me. I took a painting class and discovered I wasn't terrible at it. I went to a wine tasting and learned the difference between a full-bodied and a light-bodied red. I spent a day in Cozumel walking through markets and buying myself a beautiful hand-embroidered blouse that cost more than I'd usually spend on myself. I ate street tacos from a vendor Diana recommended, and they were the best tacos I'd ever tasted. In Belize, our group hired a guide who took us to Mayan ruins. Standing at the top of an ancient temple, looking out at the jungle, I felt so small and so large at the same time. Small because the world was vast and I'd seen so little of it. Large because I was finally living, really living, for the first time in decades. One evening, I was having coffee on the deck when a man sat down at the next table. He was probably my age, with silver hair and a weathered face that suggested he'd spent a lot of time outdoors. "Beautiful sunset," he said, gesturing at the horizon where the sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. "It really is. First cruise? That obvious?" He laughed. "You have the look of someone still amazed by everything. It's nice. I'm Robert. Vivian." We talked for over an hour. Robert was a retired engineer whose wife had died 3 years ago. His adult children had expected him to move in with one of them, to become the live-in babysitter and handyman, but he'd decided to travel instead. They were furious, he said with a slight smile, called me selfish, said I was abandoning my grandchildren, but I'd spent 3 years caring for Marion during her cancer. I loved every minute with her, but it was hard. When she died, I realized I'd forgotten who I was outside of being her caregiver. Did your kids understand eventually? Some did. Some didn't. My daughter Emily came around after about a year. She apologized for trying to make me feel guilty for living my life. My son Marcus still barely speaks to me, but I've made peace with it. I can't control how they react to my choices. His words resonated deeply. I couldn't control Claire's reaction. I could only control my own choices. Robert and I started meeting for coffee every evening after that. Not romantic, just comfortable. Two people who understood what it meant to reclaim your life from people who loved you but didn't see you. On Thanksgiving Day, the ship's crew had prepared a special dinner. Turkey and all the traditional fixings, served in the main dining room with festive decorations and live music. I sat with my group of new friends, Diana, Patricia, Karen, Linda, Susan, and Robert, who had joined us by then. As we ate, I thought about what I would have been doing if I'd stayed home, cooking for 22 people, most of whom wouldn't thank me. Cleaning up while everyone else watched football, being invisible in my own house. Instead, I was here, being seen, being valued, being Vivian. "What are you thankful for?" Diana asked when dessert arrived. We went around the table. Patricia was thankful for second chances, Karen for the courage to set boundaries, Linda for discovering herself at 70, Susan for the freedom to choose adventure. When it was my turn, I said, "I'm thankful for finally understanding the difference between being a good mother and being a doormat." Robert raised his glass. "To being seen for who we are, not just what we can do." We all clinked glasses, and I felt tears in my eyes. Happy tears for once. After dinner, I went back to my cabin and turned on my phone for the first time in days. 17 voicemails, 34 text messages, 2 emails. I scrolled through them with a strange detachment, like reading about someone else's life. From Claire. "Mom, Thanksgiving was a disaster. We tried to host it ourselves and everything went wrong. Jason burned the turkey. Beverly complained the entire time. Half the family left early. I hope you're happy." From Jason. "Vivian, your daughter is devastated. We had to cater the meal last minute and it cost us $2,000. This is your fault." From Beverly. "Your selfish behavior has ruined the holiday for everyone. I hope you're proud of yourself." From Janet. "Vivian, please call me." Claire sounds really upset. "Can't you just apologize and sort this out?" And then, at the bottom, one from Margaret. "Hope you're having the time of your life. You deserve it. Don't read any messages from your family. Wait until you're home and stronger. Love you." I should have taken Margaret's advice, but I was curious about the later messages, the ones from the last few days. From Claire, 3 days ago. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said, about me only calling when I need something. I went through my call log. You were right. I'm ashamed." From Claire, 2 days ago. "Jason and I had a long talk about money, about taking you for granted, about everything. He didn't realize how much we'd been asking from you. Neither did I, really. We just got used to you always being there." From Claire, yesterday. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't deserve it. But when you get back, can we talk? Really talk? Not me asking for things, just talk?" I stared at that last message for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe it. Part of me was terrified it was just another manipulation. I turned off my phone again and went to bed. The rest of the cruise passed in a blur of sunsets and laughter and conversations with people who saw me as Vivian, not as someone's mother or someone's bank account. Robert and I exchanged phone numbers on the last night, promising to stay in touch. "You've got a light in your eyes now," he said as we stood on the deck watching the port lights grow closer. "You didn't have it that first night. Whatever you're going back to, don't let them take that light away again." "I won't," I promised. When I got home, my house felt different. Not in any physical way. Everything was exactly where I'd left it. But it felt like mine in a way it hadn't before. Like I'd reclaimed it along with reclaiming myself. I unpacked slowly, savoring the memories attached to each item. The embroidered blouse from Cozumel, the small painting I'd done in art class, the photos Diana had taken of all of us at dinner. My phone rang. Claire. I took a deep breath and answered. "Mom." "You're back." "I'm back." "How was your trip?" It was such a normal question, asked without agenda. When was the last time Claire had asked me about something I'd done without immediately following it with a request? It was wonderful. Life-changing, actually. "I'm glad." She paused. "Mom, can I come over? Not to ask for anything, just to talk?" Every instinct told me to say yes immediately, to smooth things over, to go back to normal. But I'd learned something on that cruise. Normal had been killing me. "You can come over tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock. Come alone." "Okay, thank you." After we hung up, I made myself dinner. Leftover chicken I'd frozen before I left, a salad from fresh vegetables I stopped to buy on the way home. I ate at my kitchen table with a book propped open, enjoying the silence. That night, I called Margaret. "You're back!" "How was it?" "Margaret, it was incredible. I met the most amazing women. I watched sunsets over the ocean. I climbed Mayan ruins. I painted. I felt alive. And Claire? She's coming over tomorrow. She says she wants to talk. Are you ready for that?" "I don't know, but I know I'm not going back to how things were." "Good. Don't let her guilt you back into being her servant." The next day, I spent the morning working in my garden. I'd neglected it for years, too busy solving everyone else's problems. Now I pulled weeds and trimmed bushes and planted bulbs that would bloom in spring. At 2 o'clock exactly, Claire's car pulled into my driveway. She got out slowly, and I noticed she looked tired, older somehow. I let her in, and we sat in my living room, the same room where I'd overheard that conversation that changed everything. "You look different, Mom," Claire said. "I feel different. You look happy." "I am happy." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." I waited. I'd learned that silence could be powerful. "I've been thinking about everything you said. About only calling when I needed something. About taking your money without ever paying it back. About assuming you'd always be available." She wiped her eyes. "And you were right. About all of it. What changed? Why are you apologizing now? Honestly?" Thanksgiving was a nightmare, not just the burned turkey and Beverly's complaints. It was having to do everything ourselves and realizing how much work it actually is, how much work you've been doing for years while we just took it for granted. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is a check for $10,000. It's not nearly enough to cover what we owe you, but it's a start. Jason and I sat down and made a real plan to pay you back." I took the envelope but didn't open it. "Claire, I don't want your money. But what I want is for you to understand why I left. Why I said no. I don't want compensation. I want a real relationship with you. I want that too." She was crying openly now. "Mom, I don't know when I stopped seeing you as a person. When you became just this resource I could call whenever I needed something. But I hate that I did that to you." "Do you know what hurt the most?" I asked quietly. "It wasn't the money. It wasn't even all the demands on my time. It was feeling invisible, feeling like I only mattered when you needed something." "I know, and I don't have an excuse. I was selfish and entitled, and I took advantage of you because you let me, and that's not your fault, it's mine." We sat in silence for a moment. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Who was that woman you were before Dad died? Before you became just my mom?" The question surprised me. "What do you mean?" I realized I don't actually know much about you. Your dreams, your interests, what you wanted to be when you were young. I just know you as my mother, who was always there to fix things. I thought about the young Vivian who had wanted to be a teacher, who had loved painting and had won a scholarship to art school that she'd turned down to marry Daniel, who had dreamed of traveling the world. "I wanted to teach art," I said. "I had a scholarship to an art institute in Chicago. But I met your father, and I chose love over school. I never regretted it, but sometimes I wondered what if." "Did you paint?" "I used to. Before you were born, your father and I had a little studio apartment, and I painted all the time. After he died, I just stopped. There was never time." "Do you still want to paint?" "I took a painting class on the cruise, and yes, I do." Claire nodded slowly. "What else do you want, Mom? What do you want your life to look like now?" It was the first time in 28 years she'd asked me what I wanted. I want to take more art classes. I want to travel. I want to spend time with friends. I want to read books without feeling guilty that I should be doing something more productive. I want to be Vivian, not just Mom. Can I be part of that? The new version of your life? That depends. On what? On whether you can accept that I'm going to have boundaries now. I'm not going to be available every time you call. I'm not going to host every holiday. I'm not going to be your emergency fund. Can you live with that? Claire was quiet for a long moment. Yes, I need to learn to live with that. I need to grow up, basically. You're 33 years old, Claire. Most people have grown up by then. I know, but I never had to because you always caught me before I fell. You made it too easy for me to stay a child. It was the most mature thing I'd ever heard her say. So what happens now? She asked. Now we start over. We build a new relationship based on mutual respect instead of you needing and me giving. I'd like that. She hesitated. Can I hug you? I nodded and she wrapped her arms around me. For the first time in years, it felt like a real hug, not a transaction. After she left, I sat in my garden with a cup of tea and thought about forgiveness. I wasn't sure I was ready to fully forgive yet. Trust takes time to rebuild, but I was willing to try. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert. Hope you landed okay. Coffee next week? I smiled and typed back, I'd love that. 6 months have passed since I got back from that cruise. My life looks completely different now, and I barely recognize the woman I used to be. I enrolled in an art class at the community college. Twice a week, I go and paint with a group of people who've become friends. My teacher says I have a natural talent for landscapes. I've sold 3 paintings at a local gallery. Claire and I have dinner once a month, just the 2 of us, and we take turns paying. We talk about real things now, my art, her work, books we've read, movies we've seen. She asks about my life, and I actually have things to tell her. She and Jason have paid back $15,000 so far. They created a real budget and realized they'd been living far beyond their means for years. Jason got a more stable job and stopped job hopping. They're learning to live without constant bailouts. Beverly and I have an understanding now. She hosts some holidays, I host others. And when I host, she brings dishes and helps clean up. We're never going to be close, but there's mutual respect now. Robert and I have become good friends. We meet for coffee every week and talk about books and travel plans. He's teaching me to play chess. I'm teaching him to appreciate art. Maybe someday it will become something more, but for now, I'm just enjoying having a friend who sees me clearly. Margaret says I glow now. She says I walk differently, like I'm not carrying the weight of the world anymore. I'm planning another trip, this time to Italy. Diana and Patricia are coming with me. We're going to eat pasta and drink wine and wander through museums full of art. My house is truly mine now. I've redecorated according to my taste, not worrying about what Claire or anyone else thinks. Bright colors on the walls, my paintings displayed proudly, fresh flowers on the table every week. The most surprising thing is I don't feel guilty anymore. For years, any moment I spent on myself came with crushing guilt. Now I understand that taking care of myself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Last week, Claire brought over a photo album I'd never seen before. It was from before she was born, full of pictures of Daniel and me when we were young. There was one of me in my tiny studio covered in paint, laughing at something off camera. You look so happy there, Claire said, studying the photo. I was. Your father took that picture the day I sold my first painting. You never told me you sold paintings? You never asked. She nodded slowly. I'm asking now. Tell me everything. So I did. I told her about my art school scholarship, about the little gallery that sold my work, about the dreams I'd had before life took a different direction. And she listened, really listened, like I was a person with a story worth hearing. That night, after she left, I looked at that old photo for a long time. The young Vivian smiling at the camera, covered in paint, full of dreams and possibilities. I'm 74 now. That young woman is gone, and I can't get those years back, but I can honor her by living the rest of my life for myself. I keep the ledger, the one with all the expenses documented, not as a weapon or a reminder of betrayal, but as evidence. Evidence that I gave everything I had for almost 3 decades. Evidence that I finally learned to stop. Sometimes Claire will reference it. Remember when you tracked every penny we cost you? I'm so ashamed of that now. Don't be ashamed, I tell her. Learn from it. When you have children someday, remember that loving them doesn't mean losing yourself. She's starting to understand. It's a slow process, unlearning 33 years of taking me for granted. But she's trying, and that's enough for now. I've learned something important these past 6 months. Setting boundaries didn't destroy my relationship with Claire. It saved it. The old relationship needed to die so a new, healthier one could grow. Last month was Mother's Day. In years past, Claire would send flowers with a card and maybe call. This year, she showed up at my door with tickets to an art exhibit she knew I'd love. We spent the afternoon wandering through galleries, and she asked questions about technique and composition. She was genuinely interested in something I cared about. "Thank you for this," I said as we had coffee afterward. "Thank you for teaching me how to be a better daughter. Even if it took me way too long to learn, better late than never." She smiled. "Maybe someday I can take you on a trip. Pay for everything, like you did for me all those years." "I'd like that, but only if you can truly afford it. I don't want you going into debt to prove a point." We're saving up. Jason and I have a real emergency fund now, actual savings. It's terrifying and amazing at the same time. That's what being an adult feels like. This morning, I woke up early and went to my garden. The bulbs I planted last fall have bloomed, bright yellow daffodils and purple crocuses, new life emerging from what looked like dead ground. I made myself breakfast and ate it slowly while reading the newspaper. At 9, I have my art class. At 2, I'm meeting Robert for chess. Tonight, Diana and I are going to a lecture about Renaissance art at the library. My calendar is full, but it's full of things I chose, things that bring me joy, things that make me feel alive. I look at that old photo sometimes, the young woman covered in paint, and I feel like I've finally found my way back to her. Older now, weathered by life, but still here, still painting, still dreaming, still discovering who I am when I'm not defined by what I can do for others. Claire texted me this morning. "Love you, Mom." Just wanted to say that. No request attached, no favor needed, just love. I texted back, "Love you too, sweetheart." And I meant it. I do love her. But I also love myself now, and that makes all the difference. People ask me sometimes if I regret those 28 years of sacrifice. The honest answer is complicated. I don't regret loving my daughter or trying to help her build a life. But I regret losing myself in the process. I regret believing that being a good mother meant being a martyr. If I could go back and talk to the Vivian who just lost her husband, the one who thought sacrificing everything was the same as love, I'd tell her this: love your daughter, support her, guide her, but don't disappear for her. Don't make yourself so small that there's no room left for your own dreams. Don't confuse enabling with helping. And most importantly, don't wait 28 years to remember that you matter too. But I can't go back. I can only move forward. And forward looks beautiful from here. Tomorrow, I'm starting a new painting. It's going to be a self-portrait, but not the tired, invisible woman I used to be. This will be the woman I've become. Strong, alive, unapologetic about taking up space in her own life. The woman who learned that saying no isn't cruel, It's honest. The woman who discovered that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships. The woman who finally understood that you can love your children without sacrificing your soul. I'm 74 years old and I'm just beginning to live. And that's not a tragedy. That's a triumph. This is Revenge Stories with Michelle, a home for quiet courage and true endings. If you feel my words, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice matters here. Your story matters too. If my story touched you, you can support me by sending a super thanks. It helps me share more stories like this one. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. What about you? What would you do if you were in my shoes? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'm always curious about your perspectives and experiences. And please let me know where you're listening from. It means so much to know my story reached you, wherever you are in the world. If you want to hear more stories about finding courage, setting boundaries, and reclaiming your life, like this video and subscribe to the channel. There are so many more stories waiting for you. Remember, you deserve to be seen. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to live your own life, not just be useful to others. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Your presence matters. Big hugs, and until the next story.